Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I welcome you all and good morning and good evening because we have a time difference in the two places. We are very honored here today to have with us a worthy speaker, Dr. Salman Azhar from Duke University, Fuqua School of Business. He has research interests ranging from data analytics to entrepreneurship and technology. And he's currently the executive in residence and faculty at the Duke University. I'll just quickly go through his brief profile. Dr. Salman is a co-founder and co-investor in over more than 120 startups. He has scaled organizations by forming teams and solving enigmatic problems. And Dr. Azhar has 35 years of experience in industry and academia, during which he has crafted and led talented teams in developing and launching innovative technical solutions in cybersecurity, data analytics, artificial intelligence, including the natural language processing and machine learning, medical systems, and financial systems. He is currently developing the big data solutions, innovative technology initiatives, and grooming leaders. Dr. Azhar earned his MS and PhD in computer science from Duke as a James B. Duke Fellow and a BS in maths and physics from Wake Forest University as a Carswell Scholar. Today, he is going to talk with us in terms of a very innovative idea, I would say, training superhero leaders. That is something which we miss all around us in most of the professions, in our public policy fields and others. And we are very hopeful from today's talk. There are going to be many ideas flowing in for potential users, both from the research perspective as well as the users of such ideas. So the floor is provided to you, sir. So please orient us with lecture or the theme on which you have chosen to speak. Later on, it will be followed by question and answers, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to focus mostly on the question and answers and just give you kind of an overview because that way I can cater more towards whatever the audience is looking for. And generally kind of that has been my style, is that every audience looks for something different and we need to cater our message and content to them. So just to kind of first of all get started, thank you so much for the introduction. And one piece of warning, never believe marketing materials. They always exaggerate things. And one of the lessons I have learned from that is to quantify a number of things that, whatever can be quantified should be quantified. Because every startup that I have ever met always says that we are hiring the best people. And my answer to them often is that I have 3 average children. And how would they make it in life if everybody is hiring the best people? Somebody has to hire the average people as well. So with that in mind, I'm going to start with kind of an overview of what I was considering sharing with you, and then really turn it over to question and answers. Let's kind of start with the topic that I wanted to talk about is success is an inside job. And that's related to superheroes. So let's kind of define what a superhero is. So if you have kind of seen, any of the superhero movies, in fact, there was a recent movie that came out about a Pakistani superhero called Miss Marvel that you may have seen from Disney. What differentiates superheroes from heroes? Any thoughts on that?
Well, this is Shahid Mahmood, research fellow at PIDE. If I may answer, hero, I mean, it's more of a human thing. It's somebody like me could be a hero, but somebody like me cannot be a superhero, because with superhero, you tend to test something supernatural quality, some supernatural quality.
Yeah, some higher level quality. And generally, you are also more concerned about things outside yourself, needs outside yourself. Another aspect of superhero, and that's the one I want to focus on quite a lot, is that they're usually anonymous. So if you have kind of seen any superhero movie, they have like a life where they live, and then whenever they go in public, they're not looking for credit. They're not looking to market themselves. In fact, they usually stay anonymous, and so that they can focus on the job at hand. So the aspect of superhero that I really want to focus on here is making other people the heroes. In other words, giving back to the community, giving back to your organization, giving back to your society, and so on and so forth. And that's a really important aspect of superhero, because one of the challenges of leadership is that everybody wants to get credit, everybody wants to promote themselves. And unfortunately, our corporate world kind of encourages and trains us to do that. Typically, what happens is that there is one CEO, and there are like 5 people that report to him, like COO, CIO, C whatever O, and all of them are interested in getting promoted. So if they are interested in getting promoted and there is only one CEO position, what needs to happen in order for them to become a CEO?
CEOs are selected by the top management because they think that these are the leaders. So in a way, they are providing them space in terms of moving up.
That is absolutely right. And then what happens is that superheroes who are generally giving credit to otherwise are usually not recognized by the boards and by the upper leadership, I should say. And typically what this does is that it turns the organization into self-promoters. People who basically promote themselves, because the only way for them to get promoted is for them to really sell themselves as somebody that can lead the organization, somebody that can be better than everybody else. So in order for, let's say, a COO to become a CEO, the first thing that needs to happen is that the CEO needs to retire, find another job, or die. So that vacancy has to happen, right? Or has to really, get fired, just mess up. So there is not much of an incentive from that perspective on a personal level for a COO to really be supportive of the CEO. And there is also not much incentive for the COO to be supportive of the CFO, because perhaps these two are the ones that are competing for the CEO job when the CEO, that job becomes available, right? So we have a situation where whenever an organization starts at a small level, and let's pick an organization XYZ, and that XYZ is started by all of us that are on this particular meeting, on this particular call. We would generally be focused on the mission of the organization. We would be all dedicated to the organization. And there would not be much question whether Mahmood gets credit or Salman gets credit or Nasir gets credit or Sabah gets credit. All of us are going to be focused on how we can serve the organization. But let's say the organization now scales to 100 or 200 people, where people stop knowing each other. And at that particular time, what happens is that the organization becomes more of a competition among people. It is kind of like, if you play for Pakistani cricket team, there can be only one captain, and there can only be 11 players. And they can, if you look at the players themselves, if they are 10 fast bowlers, there can only be 2, 3, or 4 fast bowlers that are picked in a particular game. So I used to see this when I was growing up, Pakistani bowlers did not hold catches from other bowlers, because if they get wickets, then they may get dropped and the other bowler gets picked. And it is only when the fielding became an important component of the game is that when Pakistani bowlers started holding catches. So, coming back to from a superhero perspective, the superhero is less concerned about themselves and more concerned about the organization. A superhero doesn't have to be a CEO, and very often is not the CEO, because they are not really self-promoters. We live in an organization of self-promoters where everybody thinks that they are, better than everybody else. So, if everybody in this call one of the reasons that Mahmood kind of gives me such a nice introduction is so that I can feel that I'm superior to everyone else, right? Or another way to look at it is that everybody has a sense of superiority, that we are better than everyone else. So unless we have some credibility established from an outsider to come in, you're not going to listen to them. If Mahmood says, hey, here's Salman Azhar, we just picked him off the street and let's see what he has to say. Okay? Your kind of initial reaction would be, I know better than this guy. He was just picked off the street. So it is all important to kind of realize that in some ways we are all picked up from the streets. In 2015, my family and I, you can see this picture in the background. I have a wife and 3 kids, which is a lot better than having 3 wives and 1 kid. We took a trip to Pakistan as tourists. And one of the things that really hit me is that, I saw all these little kids walking around barefoot and so on. And I kind of thought to myself that I could be really one of these kids. And the reason that I really kind of felt that was that I was one of those kids. And there's not much of a difference between me and these kids. And when I was growing up, there were people that were smarter than me, that worked harder than me, who just didn't get the opportunity. So as a leader, if you can identify those people that are really kind of not getting any opportunity at all, not being utilized at all, and you can start utilizing them, you will add a lot more value than taking somebody that is already at the top and trying to do some khushamad or something like that and make them a little bit bitter. So I kind of exaggerate this point to make it because, naturally you are going to protect your self-interests. But when you are in an organization, particularly an organization that you care about, like the, I guess, is PIDE or PIDE, how do you pronounce it?
It's PIDE.
PIDE. So it's an organization like PIDE that you really care about. Then it is important for you to kind of become a superhero, and part of being that superhero is to help others, to train other heroes. What differentiates a superhero from a hero is that the hero is a hero. They do amazing things. A superhero is somebody that helps others do amazing things and sits in the background anonymously and doesn't look for credit, derives that credit. Slides are not moving, by the way. We just kind of like very static. I have like a total of 4 slides, so they would go really slowly. Unlike having 100 slides where I go.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah. It's more, I think, interesting to listen to you rather than read the stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. All right. So that's really kind of like the thought. And now let me kind of give you the structure of what I'm going to talk about. It's all not going to be like, random stuff. So there is this idea of success being an inside job. In other words, that you look inwards for that. And there are 13 aspects that are identified by John Maxwell, who is one of the leadership coaches and trainers and so on. And some of them have to do with the mindset in terms of how we think, and others have to do with action. And both are really important. The mindset helps you figure out what the right actions are, and the action makes it real. If you just have the mindset where you have the absolute perfect strategy and you never take any action on it, you all sit at home or sleep or don't do anything productive, you're not going to be very useful to the society. And if you just do actions without thinking, you may actually cause more damage than benefit anybody else. So both are kind of important. And when I present to them like this, it is really going to be very difficult for you to capture what I'm saying. So instead, I'm going to introduce a concept that has been very helpful for me in terms of understanding and learning. And this is really now, the next couple of minutes are going to be about how to learn better, the art of learning. And one of the tools here is a logic tree. And if you look at the left side of it, that gives you how the logic tree looks like. You have a concept which is in very dark blue, and you divide that concept into 3 concepts, and then you keep on subdividing that concepts into smaller and smaller concepts. This idea is called chunking. And the idea of chunking is that a human brain can't capture more than a few concepts at a time. So think about this, that when you want to figure out what groceries you need, and you have a long list of 25 going anywhere from potatoes to rice and so on and so forth, it is very difficult for you to keep that in your brain. You have to write it down. And when you write it down, whether you do grocery yourself or somebody, if you're in Pakistan and you have somebody doing the grocery for you, they have to go to different places. And if you have potatoes written here and cucumbers written here, and potatoes and cucumbers are from the same place, they will be going back and forth, back and forth. So in America and in Pakistan as well, we have now grocery stores, right? So in grocery stores, it is a little bit better and it's a little bit less going back and forth. But still, if I have 5 vegetables and they are at random places, it is going to be difficult for me to, or it's going to take time for me to kind of do my grocery shopping, and I'll have to write it down. But think about another way of doing grocery shopping. Here, basically, you're thinking about what you're going to make. So, for example, if you are going to make chicken curry or you're going to make kebabs, they have certain ingredients that go into them. So, for example, for chicken curry, you will need chicken, you will need tomatoes, you need onions, you'll need some spices, depending on what spices that you want to use, namak, mirch, and all that stuff, right? But now, if in your brain, you can actually do this. You can say, these are the ingredients that I need for chicken curry. These are the ingredients I need for kebabs. These are the ingredients I need for rice, and etc., etc., etc. You see how now your thinking becomes so much more clear than it was before. Other side of it is that when you organize this information from a deductive process like we did in terms of what my grocery list is, on the other side you will have, as you can see on the rightmost sides of this tree, you will have different items, and you will have potatoes on the top that are going to go with aloo keema, and then you may have at the bottom rice which go with pulao. You have to now reorganize this based on what you are shopping for. So you chunk all the vegetables together, you chunk all the meat together, you chunk all X, Y, Z together, and so on. So does this concept of a logic tree make sense? Any questions about this before we move on?
Yeah, I wouldn't like to ask, but just as Dr. Khalid said, we are just so used to asking questions at the end. So we'd like to listen to you,
okay,
and then
all
ask
right.
questions.
So what happens?
But if you requires that we should interact, we can.
That is okay. The reason I do it this way is that if I speak for 30-40 minutes, unfortunately, all of you are going to be asleep by the time we are done and the question and answer comes. So this is my way of keeping you alive.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah, and incidentally, the lower right that you see is in tribute for Ramadan or Ramzan. I guess it's in Pakistan. I should call it that way. There's a popular TV kids show called Sesame Street that you probably have heard of, or your kids have at least heard of, and that had a special on Ramadan. So this kind of keeps from that. So coming to logic tree, here's how this logic tree looks. Okay, on top you have the green boxes of mindset and action that we talked about, and then the mindset is divided into 3 aspects: responsibility, learning and unlearning, love. And then action is divided into 2 concepts: just do it and productivity. Okay. So I am going to quickly go through this and then turn it over to question and answers so that we can go all over the place. So let's talk about responsibility. And if you look at responsibility, the first thing starts with yourself. Take responsibility for my future. And this says that I'm going to hold myself accountable rather than hold others accountable. If you really start to realize that nobody in this world owes you anything, Mahmood doesn't owe me anything. I don't owe Mahmood anything. We are all responsible for ourselves. If we get help along the way, great. But if we don't get help along the way, we can't really complain. Right? Yeah. And these days, even children, as they're growing up, don't owe their parents much or don't do much for their parents. They just move away and do it themselves. It's kind of like our generation is caught between this thing where, when I was growing up and I was sitting on a dining table, I wasn't allowed to speak because the adults were speaking. And now that I've grown up and I have kids, I'm not allowed to speak on the dining table because the kids are speaking. So our generation is kind of like an inflection point in that sense.
But here, the difference between owing part and asking, have that changed also? Like maybe earlier, the kids used to think that it's the responsibility of the parents to provide us all the goodies which are needed, or the direction even, or financing. That has also changed over time, or that part is still there?
I am not quite sure, and I think that has become less as well because there is a kind of a move towards independence, and some of that is a good thing because people are taking responsibility for themselves, but it can be a bad thing also because it kind of promotes individualism where everybody is in for themselves, and it becomes kind of a dog eats dog world, or a rat race or something.
On the same note, is it related to the other parts of life as well, in which normally we are expecting too much, but we are not willing to offer? So any bad person cannot basically talk something bad about me, but I myself can do it because that's me who is thinking in my own domain about what I owe and what the others' responsibilities are.
Yeah, so Nadeem, I'll come to you in just a second. So there is a psychological concept called fundamental attribution error. And the basic concept, and you can think of it as a mathematical theorem, the basic concept of fundamental attribution error is that when you make a mistake, it was an unintentional mistake, and you're a lot better than that. Yeah. But when somebody else makes a mistake, they are incompetent, they actually meant to hurt you, and they are totally useless to the society. And that has several aspects to it. If you really get deeper into this, is that whenever you, let's say you are just, you and your spouse, are talking, you believe that you are always right or almost always right. And whenever you are presented with facts, you will dig in deeper as opposed to change your opinion. And you see this in politics all the time, right? And I'll use the example of American politics because I don't want to get into the sensitivities of the Pakistani politics, especially these days. I don't want you guys to start fighting each other like the Pakistani police from different places fights each other. So like people who are Donald Trump fans would stay Donald Trump fans, even if they're confronted with, any illegal thing that Trump has done. People who are Biden fans would remain Biden fans, even if he kind of mumbles, jumbles, and says things that make no sense. So that's actually, by the way, this is the reason I want to have a conversation about these things, is because I did not intend to talk about fundamental attribution error, but this is something that you picked up, and then now you can Google things and even chat GPT things. Nadeem bhai, you have a question or comment?
Sir, my question is regarding the success. When we say we have to set the goals, plans, and priorities, this is the very important. But the goals, both the success and the failure, people have the goals. What about the systems to achieve the goals?
Yeah, so that's a very important point. So during the time of HP and Agilent split, I was in a lot of boardrooms because our company was responsible for splitting the two companies, their databases and all their systems and so on and so forth. And Carly Fiorina, who was the CEO of HP at that time, said something that I would never forget. She said, when I enter the golf course, I have exactly the same strategy as Tiger Woods. But it's the execution that differentiates us. So the differentiation is very important. And when we are talking about mindset, I'm talking about setting those goals. And when I talk about action, I'm talking about taking action on them. If you don't set the right goals, you may be heading very, very fast, extremely fast in the wrong direction. It's kind of like you say, okay, I'm going to get in my car and I'm just going to drive. Okay. You want to go from Lahore to Islamabad, but you end up in Karachi very, very fast, right? So both are important. And the other kind of subtle aspect of it is that your goals and my goals and everybody else's goals may be different. I cannot set your goals because I don't know what your values are. And this is where kind of a lot of things go wrong with success coaches and leadership trainers and all that stuff, is that they have their own mindset and their goals are based on that mindset. So for example, making lots and lots of money is not at the top of my list. Top of my list is impact. And if somebody basically tries to coach me, tries to help me make more money, they would not fit in my goals. So now if you turn this around, when you ask people for advice, if I ask Dr. Nadeem for advice and say, no, Dr. Nadeem, give me some advice. And Dr. Nadeem is going to say, hey, you should really do a PhD in economics because economics is really the thing. It's really the right thing. And I think that's what everyone should do. But I don't have that much of an interest in economics. So I have to take his advice and I have to abstract away what it means to me for me. What is the change? So think about it this way, that when you learn how to drive, let's say you're learning how to drive on dry roads, and now it starts raining. You have to think what changed. What is the difference between my driving on a dry road versus my driving on a wet road? And that's the same change, same kind of mind shift that you have to go through when you think about, hey, this person is giving me advice and they're giving me advice to make the most money, or they're giving me the advice to live in the biggest house possible. What do they really mean? Well, they mean that I need to learn something, and they mean that I need to live in a comfortable house with people that I like, and so on and so forth. So see how this takes all the tension away from giving and taking advice, because now it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It is basically taking whatever we can take from the society, from anyone, and learning from it. And and we really expand our learning. I learn from cashiers sometimes because they say things and they do certain things, or how they scan things. It's kind of like a constant observation there. So the next thing in this is believing in yourself, your mission, and others. And part of that is that belief in myself has to be tempered with reality. This is not wildly believing that I'm the smartest person, I'm the strongest person, and so on. But it is kind of saying, hey, this is what I can do. So for example, if my belief is that I'm going to make the Pakistani cricket team, there is going to be very little chance of that belief coming true. And the more beliefs I have in my life like that, and I fail at doing that, is going to actually make it harder for me to ever succeed. I get like 10 failures in a row where I try to make a cricket team, I try to win the Nobel Prize, and so on and so forth. And see, I'm actually almost saying that something different from what you are used to hearing about, that if you believe in yourself, you can do anything. Where there is a will, there is a way. My neighbor across the street, his name is Will, and I tell him, I have a will here, but I don't have a way. I can't do this. If I feel like I can drive, I want to drive a car at 500 miles per hour, I can't do that, right? So it has to be tempered in reality. So these are the three aspects of responsibility. Any questions about that?
I have a small, quick question from this perspective. Can this concept of responsibility be assigned to somebody? Like, for example, although again it's not a good example, but politicians are generally thought of the ones which are representing the system. So, can we think about the responsibility as a task or something which is being provided to you to achieve rather than taking it by myself, linking it with my mission, my objectives, or thinking like that?
So that is you're actually exactly saying what a superhero thinking is, that your mission and your goal is not just about yourself, but your goal is about what the society needs. There is a concept of ikigai. Has anybody heard of ikigai in Japanese culture? So, so this is the reason I love these questions, right? So let me.
Sir, my question is, organization has vision and mission, and generally we define the mission as the reasons for existence of the organization. But what about how we align the individual vision and mission with the organization vision and missions?
Well, that's
So
a
there
very
is a
yeah, that's a very tough question, and it is not. If you can solve that question, you can really do anything you set your mind to.
It's the main issue in public sector, by the way, where the individuals really don't know how they match with the public sector requirements.
It's an issue in my home, right? We have a few people living in my home, and we really don't know how best we can align our goals and missions to achieve the best possible results for all of us. So this is a very tough kind of ask, and this is not my area of expertise. I think this is more of your area of expertise from public policy or economics perspective, because all economics for me is about is assigning scarce resources to optimize the outcome, right? And this is a very kind of like a elementary view of economics, and I know that's a lot more complicated. It's like somebody telling me that computer science is like writing code and things. So let's first talk about the individual part, and then we can kind of like figure out what the overall part is. So this is the concept of ikigai, and if you see that on two opposite extremes, you have what you are good at and what the world needs. And there needs to be kind of a balance in that. So if the world needs something and you're not good at it, and you start trying to provide it, you're going to do more harm than good. And if you're good at something and the world doesn't really need it, you would have a tough time anybody kind of taking you seriously. The vertical axis is doing what you love and doing what you get paid for. So, my son loves to write novels, for example, but he has realized very quickly that he can't earn the money doing that. So he works as a software engineer, and that's what he gets paid for. And then he writes novels. Now that creates kind of a dichotomy in his life that becomes a little bit difficult to start with when you are early in your career. But as you grow older, you realize that there are multiple things that you will end up doing. So it's not just like one thing. You cannot be defined by writing a novel. You can't be defined by writing software. You can't be defined by driving a car or getting in a plane. It depends on what the situation is. So this is kind of like the individual aspect. And then from an organizational thing, it's really the same concept, right? In order for an organization to succeed, let's say PIDE's example, you have to do what the world needs.
Yeah.
And you also need to be good at it. So let's say if the world needs economic progress and you're not good at economic progress, it's going to be kind of a useless thing. So give me 1 second. No, you can take the car. Yeah. Sorry about that. This is the interesting thing about working from home is that our lives have kind of blended. At least my life is kind of blended in this thing. So on the other side, it is the same thing. What you love doing. Let's say you love making economic progress for Pakistan and developing Pakistan and so on, but you don't have any resources to do that. Nobody is going to support you to do that. Then it is not going to work. And the thing that makes it harder is that whenever there is more than one person that comes in to the organization, there's a shift in this whole process. It's the same process in my opinion, but there's a shift because now we get into a negotiation scale because different people love doing different things, different people are good at different things, and that can be a blessing if we can agree on how to position these things. It's kind of like a game of chess where you have like different pieces, and different pieces have different ways of moving and different strengths, and they have to now coordinate themselves. Except it's harder because in chess, one person is usually playing the game. In this case, there are several people and they have their own free will. So I'm sorry I couldn't solve that problem for you in this hour and a half.
No. Some paradoxes are always there, so we have to live it and we have to bear with them, I think.
Yeah, it's a process of evolution, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so shall we go on to learning and unlearning?
Yeah. Please go.
Okay. So learning part, you've actually probably already heard a lot about. And, I hinted on this, is that always be observing and learning from other people, the situation, the environment, and so on and so forth. Sometimes, you're driving, and that's happened to me a couple of times that I've seen an accident right in front of my eyes, right? And that kind of serves as a reminder that I need to pay attention while driving. I shouldn't speed. I shouldn't be like crossing lanes here and there and so on. And then it is also learning from your own mistakes. And sometimes those learnings stick with you a lot longer. So every time you do something, you win. You win either because you accomplish something or you win because you learned something along the way. So failure is not necessarily a failure if you can learn from that failure and improve for the next time, because it's a marathon. It's not like a sprint. The other thing that I suddenly threw in there that you probably haven't seen much of is unlearning. It's so important for us to unlearn things that worked in the past and don't work anymore. Things that worked in the past that don't work anymore because things changed. Like, for example, when I was growing up and it came to marriage, our parents used to say, okay, this is the person you're going to marry. And one of the reasons that systems worked very well is that people usually used to grow up in a neighborhood. They didn't travel much outside that neighborhood. And even if they traveled outside that neighborhood, it was still in the same city or the same general locality of the city. If they went and visited relatives, they usually stayed at their relatives' homes and again kind of reinforced being with people like them and knowing people really well. And because of that, the arranged marriage institution worked very well. Now, as soon as people started going to study abroad, that whole institution changed. Because nobody now, when I went to US, nobody from my neighborhood had any visibility to what I was doing. I could be like, a sharabi kababi kind of person and, just a crook. And I can come home and shave and cut my hair and look very nice and wear a suit and this person has come from America, I must be great. And a lot of people got burned by that, right? Because some people came back to Pakistan and they had like boyfriends, girlfriends, or whatever like that in America. And then those boyfriends and girlfriends made their way to Pakistan. And that you can imagine what kind of like ruckus that caused. So it is important for us to learn, but it is even more important for us to unlearn sometimes. There is, talking about entrepreneurship, which I've, been involved in a lot of companies. What I have observed is that people are more likely to be successful in their first company than successful in their second company if they're successful in the first company. And the reason for that is that when they were working on their first company, they were really trying to pay attention and trying to do the best they can. And there was a certain way that they found that worked. In the second company, they assume that the same thing they tried earlier is going to work. And when they did that, it did not work. And they failed. You can also call this overconfidence. And the flip side also works. The underconfidence also works. They didn't have enough confidence that they're going to succeed. So that became a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they were always concerned about failing. And if you're always concerned about failing, you become so defensive that your chances of success diminish. And finally, love. And this is something I feel that, when I was growing up, this was not even part of the Pakistani thinking. I was told I have choices to become a doctor or an engineer. Love was not part of it. In fact, when I chose, it's still the same?
It's still the same.
Okay. Yeah. If I told my parents I want to go and become an economist, I would probably first get, a long lecture. If I continue doing that, I would get a few yells. If I still continue doing that, I probably would get up locked in my room, so that I can think about it. Right. And the reason that love part is so important in terms of figuring out what to do is that if you don't have that, and you are supposed to do this like 8-10 hours a day, you would never be happy doing it, and you will not like yourself. It would just have impact on other aspects of your life. And I see, even in America, I see, I did my PhD from Duke, and I came back to Duke, and there was a secretary that was working there. It was the same secretary that worked there for the 20 years I was gone. And I said, "Oh, wow, you're still here." And she said, "Yeah, I still can't afford to retire." And, when we talked a little bit deeper, she was continuing to work at a job that she never liked. And she did that for the last 20 years of her miserable life, because she couldn't afford to retire. And she was just so stuck. And this is where the learning and unlearning comes in, particularly the unlearning. She was so stuck in that way that she never thought that she could do something else. So that's basically the aspect of things. And there's a way that you can trick your mind into loving what you do. Let's say you are stuck doing something. You can trick your mind into saying, "I'm going to do it anyway." I tell my students this thing, is that, look, this is a required assignment, but pretend that this is an optional assignment and just love doing it. And you will find yourself, or if you trick your brain doing that you are, oh, this is something you're doing for the love, not doing it because it's required, it would actually change their mindset. So if you're going to do anything anyway, you might as well love doing it.
But how often are we possible to do that? Because we talk about the passion, something which you have as your own life goals, and then it sinks in terms of what you're doing. But can the mind be tricked somehow? Like maybe some cause, a national cause, or something which is more attributable to, let's say, my parents' legacy, or something which actually is bigger than my own self, which basically pushes me towards in terms of thinking like that.
Yeah. So definitely the mind can be tricked almost all the time. Almost all the time. So we don't realize how easy it is for us to trick ourselves. We realize how easy it is for us to trick others, and how to impress others, and we overestimate our ability to do that. But for us to kind of trick our own mind is actually much easier than we think it is. So picture this, I'll give you an example, when a practical example that really applies. When Nasir kind of talked to me about sharing, some thoughts with all of you, he gave me two choices. One was early morning and the other was late at night.
Yeah.
And the late at night was so late that my brain has stopped working at that time. And the early morning was so early that it is hard for me to get up. So I typically, get up for Fajr. I hardly open my eyes, pray Fajr, and go back to sleep. And then I have no alarm. I just wake up whenever I want to wake up. Okay. But for today, I had to wake up at 8 a.m., which for me, alhamdulillah, is an achievement. Okay. So
Thank you.
Yeah. So I tricked my mind into believing that I have to wake up at 8 a.m. But if you really think about it, I really don't have to wake up at 8 a.m. I don't have to be here. I just tricked my mind into doing. What happens if I just am, I just sleep and you wake up at 11 o'clock and you guys are all here waiting? You probably would like wait here for 10, 15 minutes and then you'll go along with your life. And after a week, you won't miss that this happened. I mean, you probably would make some badwas and stuff to me, for, wasting your time. But, you'll get over it for a week. But I tricked my mind into believing that it is important for me to be here this morning. So always trick your mind. Always play games with your mind. And don't play games with others, in fact. Play games with yourself. Other
That's
thoughts.
the easiest part. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. We play games. We play games with others, and I'm actually not a big fan of it because you lose credibility that way. I had this experience. I think it was 2012. I was managing a team in Pakistan, and U.S. companies tend to underpay people in Pakistan or offshore and overpay people that are in U.S. And one of them was really underpaid, and the reason he was underpaid is that he dressed like a Maulvi. And people in US thought that, he is kind of some kind of a relative of Osama bin Laden, or, I'm exaggerating to make a point. Like, how can a Maulvi be useful to us, right? Just because he dressed like a Maulvi. And he was underpaid, and I was working on his raise, and I was supposed to talk to HR on a Monday. That I told him that I'll talk to HR on Monday. Monday came in 5 p.m. and he says, "Have you talked to HR about my raise?" And I told him, I'm sorry, I forgot. I will do that first thing tomorrow morning. Now, I could have easily told him yes, and he would not have known. But imagine the powerful impact that it had on him and others around him, that I will tell them the truth. And this actually became very helpful for me, because at one time when the economy got tough, we were downsizing and we were laying off people. And one person called me and she said, I support my parents, etc., etc. And I hear there are layoffs coming, and I may not have a job. And I told her, yes, there are layoffs coming. No, you're not going to be one of them. In those 2 sentences, I was able to accomplish what most people could not accomplish in 2 weeks, because they don't have the credibility. And it takes only one little thing for you to be caught lying, and you lose all your credibility. Unless, of course, you're a politician and I really believe in you as a god. So, and it doesn't matter which politician you are and which country it is.
Agreed.
Then you can get away with anything. Like Donald Trump gets away with anything. Okay. Should we go over to action?
Yeah, please.
Any other questions? Okay. So action are 2 components. One is just do it. So just do it. It says, okay, don't overthink it. Just do it. You learn along the way. My Mamu had an interesting way of teaching his nephews and nieces driving, and probably his children also. I was not his children, but a child. And what he used to do is that he used to take the car out, go out of the house, park it on the street, give you the keys, and say, drive home. That was just do it. Now, he would do it at, not on the middle of, Sharai Faisal or something like that. You do it at a relatively quiet neighborhood and stuff where the risks are minimized. But the thing is that, he could have like drawn figures and taught me like 100 different things, and they would not make any sense until I do it themselves. And in my classes, I actually implement that because I give them assignments about a concept before I talk about that concept in class. Because my purpose is not for them to do well in the assignment. That's their goal. My goal is, I don't care how they do. My goal is for them to learn. And once they have done the assignment and they have like faltered their way through and they know what is hard and what questions they have, when it comes to the lecture part and the meeting part, they gain a lot more out of it. Aren't you glad I didn't give you as an assignment before this session?
It would have been good if you had given us some. Maybe we would have learned more from you.
So the first part of overachievers, like all of you here, is don't be perfect. That's this part here.
Yeah.
Okay. We in our quest for perfection, we give up on doing something that is good enough. We'll never be perfect. I spend 80% of the time in the last 20% of my presentations trying to perfect them. And the only way now I have started doing presentations is that I do them like 5-6 slides, because otherwise I'm going to be just
You get lost.
get lost and it will be thing. Next is deliver what I promise. Okay. If you ask me to be here by 9 o'clock, I should be here by 9 o'clock or perhaps a little bit before it. Because if I do that consistently, I establish a credibility for others and myself and a confidence that I can do it. If I have a 50-50 hit rate, it doesn't matter. So for example, if you are kind of like, fasting, right? And you just get up every morning and fast, and you're delivering on that promise, you will, by the time you have fasted 3 times or 10 times, it would be very easy for you to deliver on that. But if every morning you get up and say, should I fast or should I not fast? Or let's make it a little bit more, non-religious thing, brushing my teeth. Like if every morning I think about whether I should brush my teeth or not, it's going to be very difficult for me. So there are some things that I do that I just do instinctively without thinking about it. It's like a reflex action. It's just almost like braking a car, when I'm driving, braking when the car in front of me stops. So certain things should become your default settings if you do them frequently and you deliver. And delivering on your promises is one of them.
Yeah.
Psychologically, if you do something for 21 days, it becomes a habit. And it becomes much easier for you to do it. Okay. So, for example, one of the things that, is really good for your emotional and mental well-being is gratitude, which is being thankful for others, to others. And if you express gratitude every morning you get up and you send an email to someone expressing gratitude, after 21 days, it will become very easy for you to continue doing it.
I think the same concept is with the Chilla, the 40 days, where the thing that if you practice something on a 40 days or maybe 40 times basis, that's going to become such a habit that it's not going to be very difficult or different for you to adopt, right? As compared to doing it again.
That is correct. And on these things, there's always wisdom that we do not understand. And now that you mentioned that, I think the 40 and 21 days are related because we are conditioned, or our mindset has developed that the first 21 days are going to be hard and the next 19 days. So 21 days is almost like the halfway point or turning point. So in a chill out 40 days, for the first 21 days, you're actually getting geared up for that chilla. And for the last 90 days, you're on cruise control.
Oh, got it.
Like, these days intermittent fasting is coming up, right? I kind of love this intermittent fasting. It's like, people, I don't do this, but a lot of people fast on Mondays and Thursdays. That's like intermittent fasting.
Exactly.
Don't make excuses. Okay. We are conditioned to make excuses for ourselves and not accept other people's excuses. And the moment we kind of start thinking about how our excuses are going to look when others hear them, we're going to stop making excuses. So, for example, one of the excuses, this is a true story. Like 8 o'clock, my alarm rang and I put it on snooze. Okay, I'm going to get 10 more minutes of sleep. That I can make an excuse for myself. But there's also a tendency, at least I have this tendency, to keep on snoozing the alarm until it's 9:15 and I'm supposed to be here at 9, and then I come in here at 9:15 and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I overslept." That's an excuse. It's an excuse that I can't do. I can convince myself that it's a good excuse, But the moment I express it to others, it's going to be horrible. Work can't see hours. This is about working at times that nobody else can see you. And there are several reasons why that makes you into a superhero. First of all, nobody is seeing you, so you're not doing it for anybody else. You're not doing it for visibility. You're doing it because that's what you want to do. Working from home has really kind of helped my work can't see hours. The only time I know go to campus is if I'm teaching, or it is I pray Jummah at the campus, or if there is some kind of a social event. That's the only time I go to campus. I don't go to campus just to sit in my office. And it really helps me kind of focus in on doing what is important for me to do, as opposed to what is important for me to look like doing. Sometimes I would be sitting in a sofa with my laptop and doing things, and I'm quite relaxed. Sometimes I would be sitting in a chair. Sometimes I would be tired of sitting in a chair, but I'm doing whatever makes sense for me to do at that particular time. Giving more to others than they expect. If I just do what people are expecting me to do and be kind of like a regular average person, there's nothing spectacular about me, I would not have an impact on anything. Nobody wants to go and say, I'm going to stay up late or I'm going to get up early to listen to an average speaker talking about an average things. Nobody even says, okay, I'm going to go to an average restaurant and eat an average meal. Everybody wants a good meal at a good restaurant for a low price. Right? So this is kind of like it's all about giving more than people expect. And that does two things. It, first of all, makes about 20% of that people grateful. 80% are never going to be grateful. Don't do it for them, right? You're not doing this so that they can kind of like say, oh, wow, what a great person. Because 80% of the people don't really care. But there are 20% of people that really care. And those people often give back to you in ways that you would never know.
Now, are we asking for some warm glow effect where we are doing it because we want something in return? Or at least we
No.
want people to call us some like the ones which are giving away even their own share. So,
Yeah, exactly. So we are not doing it for that, because if we do it for that, we will end up in a lot of disappointment. And that's what I said, 80% of the people are never going to care. You're lucky if 20% do. Like, if there are like 20 people on this call, 3 or 4 of you would probably remember me. Let's say, after I'm gone, or if I can't help my child, you would help my child or my relative, or, give them your wisdom. But 80% of you, would just go on with your lives. And if I start expecting that I'm giving people more than they expect, to expect something back, I would be quickly disappointed. But what I'm saying is that I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for the humanity enough that there will be. I have had amazing kind of things. I'll give you how I ended up at Duke's Business School. Was that I was in computer science at that time, and I was not really happy because computer science is part of arts and sciences at Duke University, and very often from a budgetary perspective, we end up supporting departments that have low enrollments. We are teaching here classes of 400 students, while other departments who have low enrollment are teaching classes of 18 students. Teaching 400 students is like running a company. I had like 25 TAs and stuff like that. So It was not, I was not very happy, but then there was a course on entrepreneurship that I was taking over from a person who taught in the business school. And I did, I was substituting for that course for that particular year. I gave more than that person expected. And I ended up in a very nice position at Duke's Business School, where I have like amazing resources. I have a color printer that is, I can print as much as I like on that. In computer science, I had a color printer was under a lock and key.
your own preferred department. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. That's the department I graduated from, that I did my PhD from. Okay, last two things, and then we can kind of completely turn it into a question answer, is proactivity.
Yeah.
Change now before you must. Anticipate things. Being a chess player actually helps me with this, because I always think of what the next move is in certain situations. And when I do that, I change before I have to change. Like, for example, if I have to focus, it's very hard for me, by the way, to focus in class or lectures and things like that. I can't focus much. But I have, I realize that I have to change that. I have to really try harder to focus. Because if I don't do that, I would end up in a situation where I am working at McDonald's, and now I have to really start working on my career and working some things there. And last thing is get control of my own life, which is, we spend a lot of time trying to control other people's lives. In fact, we spend more time controlling other people's lives, particularly if you're married. We try to control our spouses. If we are parents, we try to control our children. If we are children, we try to control our parents. But we don't really spend that much time trying to control our lives. And there's a balance there, right? Like, for example, if I try to control my life and try to get up early in the morning, and I'm not a morning person, that's not what I really mean by control my life. I mean going back to it, like finding your own values, your own mindset, and seeing, oh, I'm more productive at night, so I should not feel reluctant to work at night. So that's really all I have in terms of like material. So now we can do it the Pakistani way and turn it, or PIDE way, and turn it over to you guys to ask questions.
No, it has been very interesting and fun to listen to you, sir. And I'm sure there must be many queries and questions and comments from the floor as well. So we can start off with Dr. Nasir Iqbal. Are you here, Dr. Nasir?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Khalid, for this wonderful, and also Dr. Salman for wonderful presentation. So, as we are economists, as you know, and we are working with the public sector, and we have like different choices how to align the policy decision, various decision that we suggest to government, and they have the different preferences. So, regarding the way that you suggest that, how we can align these two different streams, that what basically we perceived as a good way to kick off the economy, and how they perceive that this is the political way to settle down all these issues. So how to create the balance between these two approaches. So that's what I was just thinking about, the way how we can treat these things.
Yeah, so that's a difficult question. Well, at least for me, it's a difficult question because I do not know how governments work in general, and I do not know in particular how Pakistani government works. I have always tried to work outside the government thing because generally my experience has been negative when working with governments, because things can move very slow. And there are just so many political aspects to working with the government and so on. So I don't know if I can answer that question. For the government, in a general concept, finding things that are common ground, that are easy to do, easy to collaborate on, to develop the trust before going on to the bigger things, is how to approach difficult decisions like this, or difficult working relationship like this. And like, let's rather than solve the world peace problem, think about okay, what can I do that is a small kind of success. So in a small success can be like having a seminar series, for example, where people can learn. A small success may be training a few people with some skills that they can monetize and support their family. And this is kind of like, I was talking to a Malaysian friend, and he was telling me that how the Malaysian economy really thrives on the Pasar Malam. Pasar Malam is basically the night market, where people gather and exchange goods. And it's kind of like you have these rediwalas or hawkers in Pakistan, except it's not just food; it's selling everything. So people don't go to like H Kareem Baksh to buy things. People buy things from each other there. So that selling something like that is a kind of like a Juma Bazaar kind of concept, except it is every night. So sorry, that's the best I can do to answer that question. I can pretend that I know everything.
No,
So
it's perfect.
yeah.
Okay. Zishan, Dr. Zishan.
Hello, this is Dr. Zishan, Research Fellow from PIDE. Wonderful presentation, sir, on the development of personal habits and how to do more effective in your life. I was interested when you were talking about how you control your mind, and eventually, if you correct your habits over the time, you become more successful. And as you rightly said, it takes normally 21 days to develop a habit. So my question is like, developing a habit is a conscious decision or is it unconscious decision? So which part of the brain make this decision how to change your habits?
So most of these have to be conscious decisions. And I'm highlighting, setting goals, plan, and prioritize. So that is very important because if they're unconscious, you may achieve a lot in things that do not matter. So, for example, for me, picking up my socks from the floor is an unproductive activity. And I do it because I just want to maintain some peace in my house. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But I have to be very conscious about and intentional about what I want to accomplish. Because if I don't have that, I may work very hard and maybe even achieve a lot of progress, but it would not be something that would help anybody. So always a conscious decision in terms of tricking your mind.
But are there any innate like attributes of individuals as well, rather than thinking we can always transform them into such kinds of individuals as superheroes or even heroes?
Definitely. Yeah, so definitely. I mean, you have to do it something, if you remember the Ikigai concept, it is something you're good at that has to be something that you want to do. And I learned that, by the way, I didn't even know the Ikigai concept at that time. I was doing my bachelor's in computer science, bachelor in mathematics and physics at Wake Forest University, and I wanted to play basketball for Wake Forest. And I played in for tryouts, and I had the basket in my hand, and I turned around, and I saw the other person's navel staring at me. So just picture how tall that person is if my head is where their stomach is. Right? That was my day of realizing I'm not going to make it as a basketball player. There's no point in tricking myself into believing that I can do that. So I have to align something that is reasonable. And there's a concept of SMART goals there that, simple, measurables, actionable, et cetera, that you should set SMART goals, and then you need to trick into doing that.
Okay. Dr. Nadeem Khan, you had a question?
Yes. Sir, thank you very much. It's an excellent and very nice presentation and a lot of learning in it. Sir, my question is, today in business world and different organizations, all the decision makers uses the data, like Google's and other organizations. But in economics and statistics and physics and other fields, it's very easy. We have a concrete data to make some decisions. But what about in behavioral sciences? It is very difficult to convert intangible to tangible forms, and especially in the field of HR. I am also teaching the HR analytics subject in various universities at different levels. I feel the difficulties in this, how to convert the behavioral sciences data into the tangible form to make this some good analytics and make this some valuable statistics.
आप सारे मुझसे बड़े औखे औखे सवाल पूछ रहे हैं
Dr. Nadeem Khan is actually one of our co-colleagues here, and he's the one which is working on these areas. So.
नहीं सर, मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाह रहा
बिल्कुल सही बात है आपकी, बिल्कुल सही बात.
Tools, maybe there's some language.
Yeah, no, so you're absolutely right that it is very hard to do that. And there are some things that human beings are better than in computers. And reading people is something that human beings are still better at than people. But so than computers. So, I really, for first of all, even if you have data in this thing, it is very hard to establish the accuracy of data. So, for example, let's start with are you happy at your work, right? Rate it on a scale from 1 to 10, right? I will rate something a 7, and Mahmood would rate something a 9. Yet I'm happier at work than he is because we are using different scales.
Yeah.
And this happens to me, by the way, with the doctor's appointments at all times, is that I have recurring kidney stones and I have past kidney stones. And the pain for kidney stones is really more than anything else that I have. So whenever a doctor asks me on a scale to 1 to 10, rate this pain, and I'm always going, okay, kidney stone is like a 10, so this is about a 6. Now, for somebody who hasn't experienced that pain, then it's like, my pain is right now a 10 because that's the highest pain I've had. So first of all, the whole structure and the scale of data is different. And then the other thing is people lie. People would tell you that you're happy. In fact, there's like a chat question that's related from Nasir, and I'll read it out to you. Despite knowing what change is meant, that change is meant for success, even personal success, but we don't want to accept it. Why? What behavior is behind it? How to frame negotiation to motivate such staff? So, here the same aspect kind of comes in, is that sometimes you're trying to tell people to do things that are good for them. If you're a parent, you have experienced that. We are trying to tell our kids that this, study for your final exam because it's coming. In fact, I never used to study until I did my O-levels or senior Cambridge, because I never realized the importance. And my mother kept on telling me, and I kept on ignoring it until she locked me up in a room. And I got bored. I got so bored because the only thing I had was books in that room that finally I started studying for my exam. So there's no one size fits all answer on the question of how do we motivate others. And there's even harder is how do you kind of make data-driven decisions due to that, based on when data is not there. So Google actually is one of the companies that is trying to do that on an HR thing as well, HR basis as well, because they being a large company, they have really studied how and when people do what they do. So I don't know if that means that there is hope for that. But I don't have an easy, clear-cut answer other than saying that try to read people. I had one more thought on this. So if I'm trying to motivate you, or if I'm trying to do something that is better for you in an organization, or whether it's collecting data or trying to make you more productive, if I do it for my own sake, it's not going to work. I have to do it because I care for the other person, and the other person is convinced that I care for them. And the easiest way to convince people that you care for them is actually caring for them. And this was a huge revelation to me, because all the books tell you how to be nice to people, but they don't ever tell you that, hey, the best way for you to be nice to people, the easiest way for you is to actually be a nice person, help people out. I can tell, the CEOs do this all the time in America. We really care about our customers. Yeah, right. You do. You care about your customers' money. You don't care about your customers. They will never. And but I run a nonprofit, and this is how the nonprofit is kind of completely different. Is that I would give advice to people, make decisions for people that are, go against the financial interest of the nonprofit organization. But over the long run, it builds a community that is better than any other community that we have.
From the same perspective, like the governments across globe, like Chinese and Russians, they are often blamed for trying to intrude into the individual's data streams and trying to influence their thinking pattern and trying to like force what socially they think is a better way to live rather than the individual thinking. So how do you relate the niceness concept there, that what the government is thinking for the society by and large and trying to influence through different data streams and other artificial intelligence measures?
Yeah, so there's an interesting kind of cultural difference between the Western society and the Eastern society, that we are often willing as people to give up our privacy in order to be better parts of the society, whether it's willingly or unwillingly, or we are conditioned into doing that. We were talking, I teach fraud analytics at Duke, and we were talking about how China is really cracking down on fraud, and how fraud in credit card and phishing and all that stuff is less in China. And the reason for that is that they really kind of like, there's no such thing as privacy. They know everything that you're doing and what kind of person you are, and they will ban you without a due process or impose sanctions or trust you, and they're okay that a few innocent people get tortured or punished for something. So, and I think this is kind of like an Asian concept of the society that has kind of, as opposed to individualism, that makes it easier. The same things would not work in US, for example. So whatever you do, you have to kind of do it with the context of what culture you're operating. And again, coming into the advice thing, when people give you advice, they're giving it from your values. So you need to kind of be able to switch that around to your value. Another thing in chat is that the concept of nudge, where, how it fits into motivating. Self-nudge is kind of like a way to make better decisions, and we kind of did that. But then if you try to nudge people or try to motivate people that are outside yourself, you have to really figure out what makes them tick. And this is something that, a lot of tech companies didn't realize, and still haven't realized. About 2007 or so, which is about 15 years ago, I got an offer from Google where I was going to manage 40 people. And I told them that I can't accept that because I need to spend at least an hour with every person. And I've already now worked at 40 hours, and I haven't even done any of my own work. I haven't even checked my email. And the reason that it was so important for me to really spend time and meet with these people is that I have to understand what motivates them. Whether time off motivates them, whether flexible work schedule motivates them, whether money motivates them, etc., etc., etc. And then I have to kind of give them motivations that are based on that. As a professor, it's really easy. What motivates the students is a better grade.
Yeah.
And I can easily kind of quantify that. But then, the earlier question and this question, whenever you are managing multiple people, especially people that you do not know very well, it's almost impossible to figure out what is the best way for the organization to work, because different people get motivated by different things.
Actually, in PIDE, we have done the opposite as well. We call it as the sludge. So even it's difficult from the nudge side, we have quantified that the sludge actually works, where the people get demotivated or the businesses are moving towards informal economy and others because of certain restrictions and documentation requirements.
Interesting. I haven't heard of sludge. But I can picture, basically you just throw mud at them, कीचड़ उछालते हैं आप उन पे.
Well, it is just related to the wastage in terms of time, additional documentation requirements. It's basically a trust deficit and the cost burden which the people feel because of the system. So they get demotivated in terms of productivity or even getting them registered in the kind of formal sector, things like that. So we have done quite a lot of work on that as well.
You must be an economist where even a trust has a deficit related to it.
We always do it in many places, like the taxation side. We say that there is a moral issue because the people don't trust the system and others like that. But if
Yeah, see
anything,
that part is like I would say don't trust the system, right? Right? But I have never heard of trust as a deficit. Like it's a budgetary deficits. You didn't allocate enough resources to trust.
exactly, exactly. My last question to you is that we have talked about how we can basically create superheroes, but eventually you want them to become leaders, maybe in the society or in the organization. So, what, in your opinion, is the requirement for such types of individuals in a system? Like, they need to be too many, or only few can work? Or what if there is nobody and we just have heroes and we try to make them as leaders which the individuals can follow?
So, theoretically, I don't think there should be any limit to superheroes. In fact, a lot of great companies have started from a few superheroes. Apple, as an example, Google as an example, at least, there are probably other companies as well, but these two I know very well. Microsoft is another one. Facebook, is another one. So yeah, so I don't think you can have too many of them, and if you don't have enough of them, I think it's really, I don't think the organization is going to work, because if you have a whole bunch of heroes, they would actually kill each other, right? That's what heroes do.
Yeah.
They are going to basically, each one of them would come in with a big ego and try to kind of like have their way with everything that is done.
So we need to have the Captain America type person
Yeah.
along with the heroes in order to manage all that company.
Yeah, the selfless hero that is like, willing to kind of make the tough decision, is willing to work the can't see hours and all that stuff.
Yeah. Excellent,
So
sir. So any
before we
questions from, yeah, yeah, sorry.
yeah, before we go, I actually want at least one woman to ask a question, because I see there are like about 20-25% women, but there are 0% questions that have come. So I want to make sure that they are allowed to speak in PIDE. No pressure.
Yeah.
So Saba, Mariam, Angela, Hafsa, Hina, Uzma, any of you have any questions? No questions. You guys don't let women speak in PIDE?
No, it's not. Actually, I'm not sure why can't they ask, because I think most of them normally speak very well, and for such gatherings, they are there to ask questions.
I think Zishan has
Zishan.
an answer for that.
Okay, Zishan, would you like to answer?
Yeah, the females, they started a little bit late, so I think they're just catching up with the debate. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So
I'll turn
if
it over
there are
back.
no, yeah. So if there are no more questions, it has been very interesting, very informative, and I at least enjoyed it a lot. And there was a video made also, and we are going to share it with the students and others on our channel so that the others can also listen to your talk. And please feel free if you have any other activity going on which you would like to present in future as well, then you can let us know and we can arrange a webinar for you where we can basically invite the relevant persons, students as well, where you can just present whatever your findings are or your research is about. So again, thank you very much for being with us. Dr. Nasir Iqbal, would you like to say anything at the conclusion?
No, thank you so much. And also, I am especially thankful to Dr. Salman for his time and the way he explained what is basically superhero and how they contribute the economy. Because earlier we feel this is only meant for heroes, not for the superheroes.
Well, thank you. And by the way, I enjoyed it very much, and I kind of learned quite a few things, like the HR kind of challenges that in terms of like making data-driven decision.
Yeah.
Trust deficit, that's a new word. I haven't a new phrase. I'll start
Sludge.
using it. Yeah,
Sludge as well.
sludge. Yeah, sludge. Another one. So whenever I can't trust somebody, I'll say, you have a trust deficit here. Let's try to kind of invest a little bit more in trust so that we can balance this deficit.
Yeah, there is a big debate on like this. If we talk about the tax collection, the main phrase that comes into our mind that there is a trust deficit between the taxpayer and the state actors, because maybe the taxpayer think that their money would not be used in the way that they assume to be used. And on the other side, the other player would see that basically the taxpayer are cheating in a different way. So the deficit would lead to some sort of like
Behavioral change.
way that they are not contributing in a way where they are supporting to each other.
Yeah, so definitely, I know that we are over time, but just a couple of thoughts on that. That is an issue with all governments and taxpayers. In US also that's an issue, and a taxpayer is never going to be happy because they're not part of the decision making process. And if you're not part of the decision making process, you would never, you'd always have that trust deficit. Even like in US, for example, most of my tax money goes to like military and killing people and stuff, and I don't like that. I just don't have a choice. And that's the reason why people don't like paying taxes, is because they have no control over where it goes. For example, zakat, I can decide who I give to. With tax, the government gets to spend a lot of money, and there are all these government employees that are sitting around doing nothing, just getting paid from money that the taxpayers paid, whether you are in US or in Pakistan. By the way, I have one thought on the HR kind of thing that came in the last couple of minutes. Which was that there was a idea I had at one time, which is to analyze employees' emails for tax analytics to try to figure out what their sentiments are, and to also kind of analyze some of the things that they say. And that's kind of like a big data problem, since big data was like one of those things. And this has been successfully already used in one of the companies I advise for doctors. So doctors are very expensive to recruit in US and very expensive to train and replace and so on. So they analyze doctors' notes to detect which doctor is at a risk of leaving. And the way they do it is all automated, and it is trained based on doctors that leave. They study what trends they exhibited in their last few weeks of being there. So there is a little bit of data that comes in data analytics that can come into that. But written words is just so much easier to do. And by the way, this is the same concept behind ChatGPT that everybody is kind of like getting excited about. These kinds of things have been just there. They just haven't been there for public use as much.
But that's going to transform the world in a way which I think was never there before. Especially this chat GPT and how it is assisting even the academic side on how the education would change in terms of doing assignments and moving forward.
Yeah, by the way, I allow chat GPT in my courses.
Wow.
Because it helps, and I do this for protection of the honest person. Because if I don't allow it, only the dishonest people would use it, and it's going to be very difficult for me to catch that. Exactly. So now it's a level playing field here. It's kind of like from a policy perspective, it is that whatever is getting hard for you to control, just legalize it if you can. Exactly. Now, if it is murder, obviously I won't propose legalizing it. But if everybody wants to drive on the other side of the road, just like legalize it. But then everybody drives on that, but on the other side of the road, right? What is in Pakistan, there's like this tinting thing, right? Window tinting. Actually, that's in the US as well. Is that there are certain limitations on how much you can tint the car. Just like legalize that. Stop wasting time on those kinds of things.
Exactly. Sir, thank you
All
very
right,
much.
you're
It has
welcome.
been very interesting, and thank you, Dr. Nasser Iqbal, for inviting Professor Salman to be part of our webinar series. And we are looking forward, inshallah, for any future activity on the same context as well, or any other potential collaboration if PIDE and you or your university can actually work on. So, sir, thank you very much, and thank you
Thank you
all
for
the
having me.
participants for being here.